Hello, my name is Jessica McCurns, and the film I chose for this assignment was The Game Changers. It came out or was released in 2018 and is narrated by James Wilk, who is a professional UFC fighter as well as a self defense coach. Excuse me. Um, his argument during this film was whether or not a plant-based diet was more efficient than one that contained meat. And he stumbled along this argument because he himself had injured himself. He had gotten a few torn ligaments in both of his knees, so he was, had to recover for a while. And it was during his recovery he was curious as to what was the quickest and most efficient way to quickly recover. And by wanting to know that, he stumbled upon an article that talked about gladiators and how their diets were actually more so plant-based than meat, which I thought was pretty interesting because I would not have assumed that myself. Excuse me. So during his journey, as stated, James changed his own diet to see if he would have any improvements with his own performance, as well as his recovery. And he spoke to a handful of athletes as well as doctors who had either changed their diets to plant-based or had, a plant-based diet all their lives or were doing studies and research on the topic, and comparing the results to those containing meat. And to his surprise, he did learn and share his results and findings of evidence showing that a plant-based diet was more efficient for not only just an elite athlete, but for the everyday individual. And some, to get even more in depth of it, some specialists even had shed light on the fact that, animal-based fat contributed to the clogging of arteries, and that fat from plants not only did not contribute to that factor, but also reversed that whole mechanism. They actually improved the blood flow in your arteries, as well as improve the endothelium. So I thought that was pretty interesting as well. The document definitely shed light on the benefits of an individual maintaining a plant-based diet and provided the comparison to those that who were not plant-based. And, research was done to show the different effects of having a plant-based diet as well, such as the less unwanted fat in the blood, as stated, and the amount of obtained protein was much higher in those who had more of a plant-based diet rather than having one that had meat in it. As well as, things like a lower bad cholesterol and, blood pressure levels will, lower and stuff like that. And some of these findings were, found even after just 1 week of changing the diet. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Just only after 7 days of changing, individuals were seeing weight loss. They were seeing better cholesterol levels, better blood sugar levels, better blood pressure levels, a little more energy in their step every day and a little more endurance and stuff like that. So I thought that was cool. Just a short period of time, honestly, and you're already seeing, improvements. That's great. Excuse me. And then personal testimonies were also imported into this documentary from professional athletes who spoke on the changes that they saw personally within their own performance when it came to doing these plant-based diets, ranging from a marathon athlete to a heavyweight champion, lifting over 1,000 some pounds, endurance athlete compared to strength athlete, two different, not very different, but two opposite, somewhat of an opposite end of the spectrum, having same results, regardless of what their activity is, what their exercise is. The plant-based diet has been more beneficial for them. And a fun statement just to throw in there that was made by the heavyweight champion, I believe is what he was. His name was Patrick in the documentary. He, stated that he was asked, how does he expect to get as strong as an ox without eating meat? And his response to that question was, Well, when have you ever seen an ox eat meat? And, made me chuckle a little bit, but I mean, it was a good, kind of question, that an ox is a strong animal. Throw another one in there. A gorilla is another strong animal, and they don't eat meat. They are more so of the plant, they're the plant eaters, but they're two very strong animals. So it's just kind of like, well, if they can do it, why can't we do it? And the question is, or the answer is, we can do it. It's just a matter of, do you want to do it? So I thought that was pretty cool. I just thought that was a little bit of humor in there. But I chose this documentary because I too have been curious about kind of cutting out meat in my diet. I was somewhat of a pescatarian for a few months, and that was interesting. I saw, a little bit of improvements in certain areas in my health. But slowly over time, I, went back to eating meat again. So it would be kind of nice to kind of challenge myself, maybe give me that same 7-day challenge to see if I can uphold, kind of cutting out meat again. Something else that just kind of pulled me into the documentary was just the title itself, the Game Changers. I wanted to see exactly, how much change was being made in the game. And to be quite honest, a lot of change is being made. When it comes to, professional athletes. One example they had in the documentary was, of a football team. And the one gentleman, his wife was, constantly feeding him plant-based foods, and he was performing very well, having a lot of energy, and it influenced his teammates to start, eating the same diets. And that same, year or so, that football team is now being seen playing in the playoffs. And it was a football team that you do not see make it to the playoffs. And here they are. So I thought, that was pretty cool. Even down to like, the UFC fighting, or, it was Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz, and coming down to the final end of their fight, Nate Diaz wins, and you learn that it was partially due to his plant-based diet. He had just had more of the stamina. He had more endurance. He was, able to utilize his energy a lot better compared to McGregor, who had openly admitted that he eats a lot of meat, steak for breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack. It's all he's eating. So I just thought that was pretty cool. Just having some of those real life scenarios, or settings to actually, draw some actual visualizations from it. That was just pretty cool. Even, there was a doctor that did a lab test when looking at athletes' plasma after they eat a burrito that had meat in it, and after they eat a plant-based burrito, something with just beans and stuff in it. And you would see a more healthier looking plasma with those after eating the plant-based burrito, because less fat was left over in the blood, which, when looking at the blood taken from after eating the animal, the meat-based burrito, it was more cloudy and stuff looking because of all the leftover fat that was in the blood. So yeah. Now, something that was said within the documentary was that I found kind of interesting was that all plants contain all the essential amino acids, but just in various proportions, which is kind of opposite of what I've always been told. I've always been told that plants don't have all the essential amino acids that's needed, which is why we need to, in the importance of combining different, vegetables and stuff like that and mixing them up so that we're gaining everything. But it turns out all plants and stuff have all the essential amino acids. It's just in various proportions. So, where it's not necessarily needed for you to combine different plant-based items or vegetables and stuff like that, it is just nearly suggested so that you're getting the proper amount of it. But they all do contain all the essential amino acids. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But of course, the controversy that came with this video was just the fact that people think, you need meat in your diet to gain the most efficient and most amount of protein. And however, whether you already knew that before the documentary or after you watched the film, it's just not true. It's not needed. an individual, whether average or elite, can gain the proper number of proteins needed through plants. And one example, just to compare food that they threw in there, was, a peanut butter sandwich having the same amount of protein as a 3-ounce steak. So, just the research needs to be done, but it can be accomplished. So overall, I kind of felt that James Wilk did a marvelous job at showing multiple viewpoints when it came to talking about this topic, and all those viewpoints kind of having the same conclusion that a plant-based diet is more beneficial for human life. Comparing, the human GI tract to one of an animal, and just knowing that, the difference between the two, and why, our bodies are not made for the same meal type. Excuse me. As well as sharing, research and studies that were done when comparing those of a plant-based diet and not, whether it just be after one meal, like with the burrito, or 1 week after changing, your diet to a plant-based diet. There were positive changes and improvements observed in overall health in individuals after these studies. So I thought it was pretty cool that James, included like real life scenarios when it came to like the firefighters who were the ones who did the 7-day challenge, or even a anti-poaching group in Africa, who spoke about, transitioning over to plant-based diets after feeling some controversy of wanting to save animals, but then turning around and eating them. So overall, I kind of feel like this film fits right into the health discussion topics of today. It is very much relevant because, a lot of people are transitioning over to wanting to be more of a plant-based diet eater than, having meat in their diet. And we're even seeing that change happen now in fast food chains. I personally did not ever think in my lifetime I would probably see a fast food joint selling plant-based healthy anything besides a salad. And even a salad can have, be way more unhealthier than a burger, surprisingly. So it's kind of cool, to see it's now touching fast food chains. It lets you know how much of an importance it is coming to people of the world. Health is becoming more of the, number one topic amongst discussions, with just everyday people, not just, those elite athletes. So I definitely recommend this to anyone who's just curious about the topic at all, or just wants to gain more knowledge about it. Even for someone as a patient, like, in a nutritional aspect, who's wanting to transition to just a plant-based diet, this is just be a very, I think it's be a very good start, very informative video on just different things to know about it. Might even shed some light in areas that you may not have thought about on your own, or just might give you an even more in-depth look on things that you already knew. So, yeah.